The tremor started in Syrah's left hand, as it always did. A subtle quiver that spread up her arm like ripples in water, growing stronger until her entire limb shook with involuntary spasms. She gripped her right wrist with her left hand, trying to still the movement through sheer force of will. It never worked. It never had. Around her, the assembly hall of Velkara Prime hummed with perfect silence. 200 faces watched her from tiered seating, their expressions carved from the same stone as the walls. No pity, no anger, just the cold calculation of a society that had weighed her worth and found it insufficient. Her father stood at the central podium, his crest fully extended in the formal posture of renunciation. His voice carried across the chamber with practiced indifference. The family of Neth are hereby declares Syrah, offspring of the third generation, to be severed from our lineage. Her condition has proven resistant to all approved treatments. Her contribution index remains at 0.3, well below the minimum threshold for family retention. We remand her to public welfare under Article 17 of the Culling Accords. Syrah had known this was coming. The notices had arrived 30 days ago, delivered by automated courier to the small room she'd occupied at the edge of her family compound. She'd had time to prepare herself, to build walls around the parts of her that could still feel pain. But when her younger sister Kiva stood and added her voice to the renunciation, those walls crumbled. "I support this action," Kiva said, her crest perfectly straight, her voice unwavering. "Syrah's presence has diminished our family's standing. This is the correct course." They had shared everything once secrets whispered after dark. Dreams of studying at the Grand Academy together. Promises that nothing would ever separate them. Syrah searched her sister's face for any hint of regret, any microscopic crack in that perfect facade. There was nothing. The tremor in Syrah's hand intensified, spreading to her shoulder. She tucked her arm against her body, a futile gesture of concealment that everyone in the hall could see. Her neural condition idiopathic oscillatory syndrome. The doctors called it had manifested 3 years ago. At first, it had been barely noticeable. A slight shake when she tried to hold delicate instruments. A wobble in her handwriting. On Velkara, where precision was currency and perfection was the baseline expectation, even slight impairment was catastrophic. She'd lost her position at the engineering firm within weeks of her first major tremor episode. Her colleagues had been polite about it, professionally distant as they explained that quality control standards couldn't accommodate her variability. Her friends had drifted away more slowly, invitations tapering off until her social calendar became as empty as her work schedule. And then her family had begun the evaluation process. "The decree is recorded," announced the arbiter, a wizened Velkari whose crest had long since faded to grey. "Syrah is hereby transferred to the Mercy Shelter of District 7. May she find peace in reduced expectation." To attendants approached, their movements synchronized to the microsecond. They didn't touch her physical contact with the renounced was considered contaminating but simply flanked her as she stood on unsteady legs and walked down the long aisle toward the exit. She didn't look back. She'd already said her goodbyes to the Syrah who had lived in that family, who had believed she mattered. The Mercy shelter was a 3-story structure at the edge of the manufacturing district, where the air tasted of metal and recycled water. The name was an elegant euphemism. There was no mercy here, only warehousing. The Velkari took care of their discarded citizens with the same efficiency. They applied to everything else minimal resource expenditure, maximum space utilization, zero emotional investment. Sarah's room was for meters square. A sleeping platform extended from one wall. A small sanitation unit occupied the corner. A single window to hide to see out of unless she stood on the platform, letting diffused light that never seemed to be either fully day or night. She shared a common area with 17 other residents, all bearing the marks of whatever inadequacy had led to their renunciation. An elderly Velkari whose memory had begun to fail. A young male born with malformed legs. A middle-aged female whose depression had made her unable to maintain her productivity quotient. No one spoke much. Speech required energy, and energy was in short supply when you'd been deemed worthless. Sarah spent her days sitting by the common area's large window, watching the city move past. Perfectly dressed Velkari strode along perfectly maintained walkways, entering perfectly organized buildings to perform perfectly executed tasks. From her vantage point, they looked like components in a vast machine, each fulfilling their function with admirable precision. She tried not to think about the fact that she'd once been one of those components. Before the machine had spit her out as defective, 6 months passed, then 8. Time became elastic in the shelter, stretching and compressing without pattern. Sarah's tremors grew worse. Her right hand had begun to shake now too, and sometimes her legs would give out without warning, sending her crashing to the floor. The shelter staff efficient. Impersonal provided basic medical care, enough to prevent death, not enough to restore function. That would have been a waste of resources. On the day everything changed. Sarah was sitting in her usual spot by the window when she noticed a human. Walking down the street below, she'd seen humans before, of course. Velkara Prime maintained diplomatic and trade relations with Earth, and human visitors were common enough in the commercial districts. But they rarely came to the manufacturing sectors, and never to the streets near the Mercy shelter. This one seemed lost. He kept stopping to check a data pad, frowning at it, then looking around with an expression of increasing bewilderment. He was tall, even for a human, with dark skin and closely cropped hair going gray at the temples. He wore practical clothing-reinforced pants, a jacket with too many pockets, boots designed for function over aesthetics. Sarah watched as he approached a passing Velkari and asked a question. The Velkari gestured vaguely and continued walking without breaking stride. The human sighed, a gesture of exasperation that was entirely readable across species lines. Then he looked up and saw the shelter. Their eyes met through the window. Sarah froze, half expecting him to look away immediately, to recognize what this building was and avert his gaze from its inhabitants. But instead, his expression shifted to curiosity. He studied the building for a long moment, then checked his data pad again, and then, to Sarah's absolute shock, he walked toward the entrance. She heard the commotion before she saw him shelter staff speaking in rapid, clipped tones trying to explain that this was not a place for visitors, that he must have made a mistake. But the human's voice cut through, polite but insistent. I understand what this facility is. I'm asking if I can speak with the residents. That's highly irregular. The residents are not receiving social calls. I'm not making a social call. I'm conducting research on Velkari urban infrastructure, and I'd like to understand how all components of your society function. It was a diplomatic lie, Sarah realized. Clever enough to invoke academic freedom, vague enough to be hard to refute. 10 minutes later, the human was being escorted into the common area by a visibly uncomfortable staff member. The other residents barely looked up. Visitors were so rare that they'd lost the capacity to be interested. But Sarah found herself sitting straighter, her treacherous hands clasping together to minimize the visible shaking. The human's gaze swept the room and landed on her. He approached with an easy stride, projecting none of the discomfort or distaste that Velkari showed in the presence of the impaired. "Hello," he said in flawless Velkari, though his accent carried the soft edges of Earth's central dialect. "My name is Marcus Webb. I'm an engineer from Earth. Would you mind if I sat with you?" Sarah's vocal cords felt rusty from disuse. Why? It was blunt, perhaps rude, but she'd lost the capacity for social niceties months ago. Marcus smiled. It transformed his face, creating lines around his eyes that spoke of frequent repetition. "Because you're the only person who's actually looked at me since I walked in. And because I'm genuinely lost and could use someone to tell me how to get to the Technology Institute from here." He settled into the chair across from her without waiting for permission. A breach of Velkari protocol that somehow didn't feel offensive. "I'm Marcus, as I said. What's your name?" "Sarah." The word came out steadier than she'd expected. "Sarah," he repeated, pronouncing it correctly on the first try. "Beautiful name. It means evening star in an old Earth language. Did you know that?" She hadn't. Why would she? Earth languages had never been part of her engineering curriculum. Marcus pulled out his datapad, genuinely consulting it for directions. "I swear, your city's navigation system hates me. I've been walking in circles for 40 minutes. The Tech Institute is 17 blocks north and 9 blocks east," Sarah said automatically. "You'll need to cross the commercial bridge, not the pedestrian one. Because the pedestrian bridge is closed for maintenance on third-day afternoons." "Thank you." Marcus made notes on his datapad. "You know the city well. I used to work near there. Before," she gestured vaguely at herself, "at the shelter, at the entirety of her current existence. Before they decided you weren't useful anymore?" The directness shocked her. Velkari never acknowledged the shelter system so boldly. It was always euphemisms, gentle language draped over brutal practice. "Yes," she said. Marcus studied her for a long moment, his eyes a warm brown. That Velkari genetics could never produce held something she hadn't seen in years. Not pity, which would have been unbearable. Something else. Recognition, maybe. The acknowledgement of one thinking being to another. "What did you do before?" he asked. "I was a structural integrity analyst. I evaluated building designs for stress tolerance." Her hands trembled harder. as if her own body were mocking the memory of steadier times. I was good at it. Past tense. My hands shake. She held them up. Let him see the tremor that had destroyed everything. I can't hold instruments steady. Can't draw precise lines. Can't be trusted with calculations that matter. Can you still do the math? The analysis in your head? Yes, but that's not enough. Maybe not here, Marcus said quietly. But where I come from, we've learned to separate the ability to think from the ability to perform specific physical tasks. We build tools to bridge the gap. Sarah had heard rumors of Earth's approach to disability, their obsession with adaptive technology and accessibility. To the Velkari, it seemed like coddling, an inefficient allocation of resources to preserve the unproductive. Your people waste resources on the broken, she said, repeating the orthodoxy she'd been taught. We invest resources in making sure every mind that wants to contribute can find a way to do so. Marcus corrected gently. There's a difference. He glanced around the common area, at the resigned faces and empty eyes. How long have you been here? 8 months. 3 days. Approximately 6 hours. That's very precise for someone who's supposedly not useful anymore. He stood, shouldering his small travel pack. Sarah, I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. She looked up at him. This strange human who'd wandered into her ending and started asking questions, as if her answers mattered. I'm here on Velkara for a year-long technology exchange program. I need an assistant, someone who understands Velkari engineering principles and can help me navigate both the technical and cultural aspects of my work. The position comes with private quarters, standard compensation, and travel privileges. Would you be interested? Sarah's heart, that traitorous organ that kept beating despite having no reason to, began to race. I can't, she whispered. I'm renounced. My family. I've already researched your legal status. A renounced individual can be claimed for employment by a foreign national under Article 32 of the Labor Exchange Treaty. I checked. The shelter has to release you if I formally request it. But I can't do the work. I can't hold things steady. I can't. You can think. You can analyze. You can teach me about your culture and your engineering traditions. And we'll figure out the rest together. Marcus pulled out a small card and placed it on the table between them. This is my contact information. I'm staying at the diplomatic residences in District 1. If you want to take the position, send me a message within the next 48 hours. After that, I'll have to find someone else. He turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, Sarah, I don't think you're broken. I think you're a capable person dealing with a medical condition that your society hasn't bothered to accommodate. Those are two very different things. And then he was gone, leaving Sarah alone with a small white card and a choice she'd thought she'd never have again. That night, Sarah lay on her sleeping platform, staring at the ceiling. Her hands shook. They always shook worse when she was anxious, and she couldn't remember ever being more anxious than this. Every rational part of her brain screamed that this was a trap, a trick, another humiliation waiting to happen. Why would a human engineer want a renounced Velkari as an assistant? He could have his pick of competent, steady-handed professionals. What could she possibly offer except liability? But there was another voice, smaller and far more fragile, that whispered a different message. What if he meant it? What if he really did value what she could still do, rather than fixating on what she couldn't? She pulled out her personal datapad, one of the few possessions the shelter had allowed her to keep, and stared at the blank message screen. Marcus's contact information glowed on the card beside her. Her fingers hovered over the keys. Even the simple act of typing was harder now, each character requiring concentration to hit correctly. She began to compose a message, deleted it, started again. Her hands shook harder, forcing her to repeat words 3 and 4 times. Finally, after an hour of struggle, she had something that felt right. Marcus Webb. I am Sarah. I accept your offer. I don't know if I can do this, but I would like to try. When do I start? She hit send before she could change her mind. The response came 3 minutes later. Sarah, excellent. I'll handle the legal paperwork tomorrow. Pack whatever you want to bring. Your quarters will be ready in 2 days. And Sarah, you don't need to know if you can do this. That's what trying is for. See you soon. Marcus Sarah read the message 7 times, memorizing each word. Then she set her datapad aside and did something she hadn't done in 8 months. 3 days and approximately 12 hours. She smiled. Outside her window, the city lights of Velcara Prime glittered with their usual precision. But for the first time since her renunciation, Sarah looked at those lights and saw not a machine that had rejected her, but a place she might eventually leave behind. Tomorrow, the paperwork would begin. The day after, she would walk out of the Mercy shelter and into whatever came next. Tonight, she let herself hope. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. This fragile thing growing in her chest. Hope was dangerous. Hope could be crushed. And she'd already been crushed so thoroughly she didn't know if she could survive it happening again. But Marcus had looked at her shaking hands and seen possibility instead of failure. He'd offered her a choice when she'd thought all her choices were gone. That had to mean something. Sarah closed her eyes and let the tremors run through her body unchecked. For once, she didn't fight them, didn't try to force stillness through alone. Tomorrow, she would start learning to live again. Tonight, that was enough. The paperwork took 3 days instead of 2. Sarah spent those 72 hours in a state of suspended animation, half convinced that Marcus would change his mind, that some bureaucratic obstacle would prove insurmountable, that the universe would reassert its previous judgment about her worthlessness. But on the morning of the 4th day, a shelter administrator appeared at her door with an expression of barely concealed confusion. You've been claimed for foreign employment, the administrator said, reading from a datapad with obvious distaste. Gather your possessions. Transportation will arrive in 1 hour. Sarah's possessions fit into a single bag. 3 changes of clothes. Her personal datapad. A small crystal her sister had given her years ago. Before everything fell apart, she'd kept meaning to throw it away, but had never quite managed. The other shelter residents watched her leave with hollow eyes. No one said goodbye. Goodbyes implied the possibility of reconnection, and everyone here had learned not to believe in possibilities. The transport was a sleek vehicle that screamed diplomatic corps, all smooth lines and tinted windows. Sarah climbed in awkwardly, her legs choosing that moment to tremble, nearly sending her sprawling across the back seat. The driver, a human woman with kind eyes, simply waited until Sarah had settled herself, then pulled smoothly into traffic. "First time in a diplomatic vehicle?" the woman asked. "First time in any vehicle in 8 months." Sarah admitted. "Well, buckle up. Dr. Webb's quarters are on the other side of the city. We've got about 40 minutes. Sarah watched Velcara Prime slide past the windows. The manufacturing district gave way to commercial zones, then residential towers, and finally to the gleaming diplomatic enclave, where off-worlders lived in carefully controlled isolation from mainstream Velcari society. Marcus's building was a mid-rise structure with actual green space around it, a shocking luxury on a world where every square meter was calculated for maximum utility. The driver helped Sarah with her bag, guided her through a lobby that smelled of earth flowers, and delivered her to a door on the 7th floor. Marcus opened it before she could knock. "Sarah, perfect timing. Come in, come in." He stepped aside, gesturing her into a space that made her shelter room look like a storage closet. The apartment was enormous by Velcari's standards, 3 rooms visible from the entrance. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Furniture that looked comfortable rather than merely functional. But what struck Sarah most was the chaos. Datapads and tools covered every surface. Holographic displays flickered in midair, rotating 3-dimensional models of structures Sarah didn't recognize. Papers, actual physical papers, an earth affectation, were scattered across a large table, covered in handwritten notes and sketches. "Sorry about the mess," Marcus said, not sounding sorry at all. "I'm in the middle of analyzing the structural principles behind Velcari suspension bridges. Your people do something fascinating with resonance dampening that I'm trying to understand." He cleared a chair, the only one not buried under equipment, and gestured for Sarah to sit. "Your quarters are through there." He pointed to a door on the left. "Private bedroom. Your own sanitation unit. Workspace if you want it. I had them install some adaptive furniture, adjustable desk height, a chair with extra stability supports. Wasn't sure what would be helpful, so I erred on the side of options." Sarah stared at him. "You modified the quarters before I even arrived." "Well, yes. You'd already accepted the position. Seemed logical to prepare." Marcus picked up a datapad, scrolled through something. "Now, about the work itself. I need to be honest with you about what I'm actually doing here." Sarah's stomach dropped. Here it came. The real explanation. The catch. "I'm not just here for a technology exchange," Marcus continued. "I mean, I am. That's the official program. But my real project is studying how different societies approach physical disability and developing universal adaptive technologies." He pulled up a holographic display showing dozens of devices, prosthetics, stabilization tools, neural interfaces, mobility aids. Earth has made huge advances in adaptive tech, but most of it is human-specific. I want to create systems that work across species, that can help anyone who needs them, regardless of their biology. He looked at Sarah directly. and I need someone who actually lives with physical differences to tell me when I'm being an idiot. Someone who understands both the technical engineering and the lived experience. You won't need to be a test subject, Sarah said flatly. I want you to be a collaborator. Marcus corrected. There's a difference. You'd have full input on design, decisions, veto power over anything you're uncomfortable with, and co-authorship on any publications that result. This isn't something I'm doing to you. It's something I'm hoping we can do together. Sarah's hands were shaking badly now, the tremors amplified by stress and the unreality of the situation. Marcus noticed, is that painful? No, just frustrating. Embarrassing. Does it get worse when you're anxious? Yes. Okay. Would you be willing to let me take some baseline measurements? Just mapping the tremor patterns? Frequency, amplitude, that sort of thing. Non-invasive, I promise. Sarah hesitated, then nodded. Marcus pulled out a device that looked like a thick bracelet. Put this on whichever hand shakes more. It'll record movement data for about an hour. Then we can look at the patterns together. The bracelet was warm against her skin, light enough that she barely felt it. Marcus returned to his work, giving her space to acclimate. And Sarah found herself relaxing incrementally. An hour passed. Then too, Marcus explained his bridge analysis, genuinely interested in Sarah's input about load distribution principles. She found herself drawn into the discussion, her mind engaging with technical problems for the first time in months. When Marcus finally checked the bracelet data, he pulled up a holographic display that showed her tremor as a complex waveform. Fascinating, he murmured. The frequency varies based on stress level. But there's also an underlying pattern that seems consistent, almost like a neurological feedback loop. The doctors said it's idiopathic, Sarah said. No known cause, no cure. Idiopathic usually just means we haven't figured it out yet. Marcus zoomed in on a section of the waveform. What if we could interrupt the feedback loop? Not eliminate the tremor entirely, but reduce its amplitude enough to restore fine motor control. That's not possible. Why not? Because if it were possible, the Valkyrie medical system would have done it. Marcus snorted. The Valkyrie medical system gave up on you because fixing you wasn't cost-effective. That's not the same as impossible. He pulled up another display, this one showing a device that looked like a thin band designed to wrap around the forearm. Neural stabilizer, still in early development, but the principle is sound. It reads the tremor pattern, predicts the next oscillation, and delivers a microcurrent that counteracts it, like noise-canceling headphones, but for involuntary movement. You're saying you can fix me? Sarah's voice came out smaller than she intended. No, Marcus said firmly. I'm saying we might be able to develop a tool that helps manage your symptoms. You're not broken, Sarah. You don't need fixing. You need accommodation. The distinction felt important, though Sarah wasn't entirely sure why. It would take time. Marcus continued. Lots of testing, iteration. Probably plenty of failures before we get anything that works. And even then, it might only help partially. But if you're willing to try. Yes, Sarah said immediately. Yes, I want to try. Marcus grinned. Great. We'll start tomorrow. Tonight. I was thinking we could get dinner. There's a place nearby that serves both Velkari and Earth cuisine. My treat. To celebrate your first day. The restaurant was quiet, tucked into a corner of the diplomatic district, where humans and Velkari mingled with relative ease. Sarah ordered something simple. She'd lost her appetite in the shelter and hadn't yet regained it. Why? Lamarcus enthusiastically explained the concept of fusion cuisine to their bemused Velkari server. So you just combine foods from different cultures, without regard for traditional preparation? The server asked. Exactly. It's great. You should try the mango curry. Changed my life. After the server left, Sarah found herself studying Marcus. He was unlike any Velkari she'd ever known, relaxed where they were rigid, emotionally transparent where they were controlled, genuinely curious rather than judgmentally analytical. Why did you really come to the shelter? She asked. Marcus took a sip of his drink, some earth beverage that looked alarmingly purple. Honestly, I got lost, just like I said. But you didn't have to stay. You didn't have to talk to me. True. Marcus set down his glass. Want the real answer? Sarah nodded. I was in a bad accident when I was 23. Military training exercise gone wrong. Crushed my spine. Paralyzed from the waist down. Doctors said I'd never walk again. Sarah's eyes widened. Spent a year in rehabilitation, learning to use a wheelchair, accepting what I thought was my new permanent reality. And then someone, a researcher I'd never met, showed up and said she'd been working on experimental spinal implants. Asked if I wanted to be a test subject. Marcus stood, walked a few steps, turned back. 5 surgeries and 2 years of physical therapy later, here I am. Still have the implants, they'll be with me for life. Still have chronic pain some days. But I can walk. I can work. I can live the life I want. He sat back down. That researcher didn't save me, Sarah. She gave me tools and options. She saw someone worth investing in when the system had written me off. So when I accidentally walked into that shelter and saw you sitting by the window, looking like you were simultaneously hopeless and still fighting, I don't know. I guess I saw myself. I'm nothing like you, Sarah whispered. You're exactly like me. You're someone smart and capable who got dealt a medical condition your society isn't equipped to handle. The only difference is you haven't met your researcher yet. You're my researcher? Marcus smiled. I'm hoping we can be each other's. You teach me about Velkari engineering and neurology. I teach you about human adaptive tech. We figure out the rest together. Their food arrived. Sarah picked at hers while Marcus ate with obvious enjoyment. Halfway through the meal, he suddenly asked, "What's your favorite food?" What? Favorite food? The thing you could eat every day and never get tired of. Sarah thought back, reaching for memories from before the shelter. There's a dish, kava root, prepared with Taurish spices and sweet herbs. My mother used to make it for celebrations. Can you get it anywhere? Like, is there a recipe? I suppose. But, great, tomorrow night. We're cooking it together. Well, you're instructing and I'm cooking. Since I'm guessing precision food preparation is challenging right now. You don't have to. I want to. Marcus interrupted gently. Sarah, I need you to understand something. You're not a burden I've taken on out of obligation. You're a colleague I respect, and a person I'm coming to genuinely like. Those are different things. Sarah felt something crack open in her chest. Some sealed-off place where she'd stored the capacity to believe people might care about her. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. Do what? Accept kindness. Trust that it's real. Believe I deserve it. Marcus reached across the table, not touching her, but close enough to show intent. Then don't worry about deserving it. Just practice receiving it. The belief will come later. The next 3 months transformed Sarah's existence in ways she couldn't have imagined. Marcus's approach to work was collaborative and chaotic. He'd wake her at odd hours when inspiration struck, drag her to his workshop to test a new idea, then spend hours listening to her, explain why his brilliant concept wouldn't work with Velkari physiology. The neural pathways are different, she'd explain for the 3rd time. Human nervous systems have more redundancy. Velkari neural networks are more efficient, but less adaptable. So we need a design that works with efficiency rather than fighting it, Marcus would say. Already sketching modifications, the first stabilizer prototype was a disaster. It delivered currents at the wrong frequency, actually amplifying Sarah's tremors until she felt like she might shake apart. The second one did nothing at all. The third one worked for approximately 90 seconds before overheating and burning her arm. Sarah laughed at that one, even as Marcus frantically applied burn gel. Well, at least it was exciting. This isn't funny. I hurt you. You're trying to help me. That's more than anyone else has done in years. A small burn is nothing. But Marcus took it seriously, redesigning the cooling system, adding safety cutoffs, testing each component obsessively before letting her try again. The 4th prototype reduced her tremors by 15%. The 5th reached 30%. By the 6th iteration, Sarah could hold a stylus steady enough to draw a straight line for the first time in 3 years. She sat at Marcus's workstation, staring at that line, tears streaming down her face while her hands hurt traitorous. Shaking hands remained almost perfectly still. Marcus found her like that, silent and crying. He didn't ask questions, just pulled up a chair and sat beside her. I drew a line, Sarah whispered. I see that. It's a beautiful line. It's just a line. It's proof that you can still do what you were trained for. It's proof that the Velkari medical system was wrong about you being beyond help. Marcus smiled. It's a miracle in the shape of a line. Sarah turned to him, the stabilizer humming softly on her arm. Thank you. We did this together. No, you believed it was possible. I just showed up. Sarah, you've been working 12-hour days helping me understand Velkari neurology. You've endured failed tests and burns and frustration. You've taught me more about your people's engineering in 3 months than I learned in 3 years of studying your technical literature. This success is as much yours as mine. Something shifted in that moment. Sarah looked at Marcus, truly looked at him, and saw not just a kind human who'd rescued her, but a partner, an equal, someone who valued her mind and her input, who got excited when she solved problems, who trusted her judgment even when she didn't trust it herself. Marcus, she said quietly, Why did you really choose me? There must have been other Velkari who could have helped you. Ones without complications. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, I chose you because when I looked in your eyes, I saw someone who hadn't given up. You were in a facility designed to warehouse people until they died. And you were still sitting by that window, still watching the world, still present. That takes incredible strength. It didn't feel like strength. It felt like I just hadn't figured out how to stop. Yet, sometimes those are the same thing. The breakthrough with the stabilizer changed something fundamental. In Syrah, with tremors reduced to manageable levels, she could do things she'd thought lost forever. She started sketching again, filling notebooks with structural designs and improvements to Marcus's adaptive tech concepts. She began venturing out of the apartment alone, exploring the diplomatic district, even visiting a technical library. The Velkari who saw her wear the stabilizer looked at her with confusion. Adaptive technology was foreign to their culture. But no one stopped her. Marcus encouraged everything. When she expressed interest in attending a lecture at the Engineering Institute, he got her guest credentials. When she mentioned missing a particular Velkari music form, he found recordings and learned how to play them on his Earth sound system. They fell into rhythms. Morning coffee. Syrah preferred Earth coffee to traditional Velkari stimulants, discovering flavor preferences she'd never known she had. Afternoons in the workshop, collaborating on designs. Evenings cooking together. Marcus carefully following Syrah's instructions to recreate dishes from her past. One night, 6 months after she'd left the shelter, they were cleaning up after dinner when Marcus's communication terminal chimed. He glanced at it and his expression darkened. "What is it?" Syrah asked. "Message from the Velkari Science Council. They want to meet with me tomorrow. Official business, they say." Syrah's hands began to shake despite the stabilizer. "They know about the adaptive technology. Probably. We've been submitting research updates as required by the exchange program. They won't like it. Accommodation is seen as weakness here. They'll see what we're doing as encouraging deficiency rather than eliminating it." Marcus set down the dish he'd been drying. "Let them. We're not doing anything wrong. We're creating tools that help people live fuller lives. If they have a problem with that, they can take it up with the Earth diplomatic cause." But Syrah couldn't shake the dread settling into her bones. The Velkari authorities had ignored her while she was quietly tucked away in Marcus's apartment. A curiosity in the humans' keeping. But if they decided she was a problem, a threat to their social order, she didn't sleep that night. The next morning, Marcus received a second message. The Science Council didn't just want to meet with him. They wanted Syrah present as well, and they wanted her to bring the neural stabilizer. Marcus noticed her tremors intensifying despite the device. "We don't have to go. I can tell them you're unavailable." "No," Syrah said, surprised by the firmness in her own voice. "No, if they want to see what we've created, let them see it. Maybe it's time some Velkari saw what's possible." Marcus studied her carefully. "You sure?" Syrah thought about the shelter, about the hollow eyes of people who'd given up, about her sister's voice pronouncing her worthless. She thought about the straight lines she'd drawn, about the structural analyses she'd been completing. about the person she'd been rediscovering with Marcus's help. "I'm sure," she said. "Besides, you'll be there. We face this together." Marcus smiled, and Sarah felt something warm unfold in her chest. Somewhere in the past 6 months, between the failed prototypes and the successful meals, between the technical discussions and the quiet evenings watching Earth movies, Marcus had become more than her employer or her research partner. He'd become her friend. Maybe more than that, if she was brave enough to examine the feeling too closely. Together. Marcus agreed. Always. The meeting was scheduled for the following afternoon. As Sarah prepared putting on her best clothes, checking the stabilizer's charge, trying to calm her racing heart, she realized something profound. She was nervous. Yes. Afraid, certainly. But she wasn't hopeless. For the first time since her renunciation, Sarah believed she had something worth fighting for. And more importantly, she believed she was worth fighting for too.